Hello and welcome to another Every Tuesday tutorial. In this week's tutorial, we're creating some simple tulips directly in Procreate. So what you see on screen is exactly what we're creating together. As always, the color palette is entirely free. There's a link right in the video description, so just tap there and you can download and install it. This project only uses one brush and it's my free mono weight brush. You can pick it up when you become a free Every Tuesday email subscriber. I'll leave a link in the video description to that as well. I'm going to create a brand new canvas that is 1500 pixels by 1500 pixels at 300 DPI, and then we'll get started. Okay, I've got my brand new canvas all ready to go, and the first thing I'm going to do is create a template for me to draw all of my petals so everything stays similar in size and really consistent. So I've already got black selected, and all you have to do is double tap where the black is and you can get true black. I've got my mono weight brush selected, and the size of it is at about 4%. So all I'm going to do is draw an oval and then draw a half oval. Okay, and that's all there is to it. I'm going to reposition this just so I've got a little more space to work with. I'm going to reduce the opacity of this. That way I can see my next template layer that I'm going to draw over it. So create a brand new layer. This is going to be my main template, so I'm going to label this one main template. Okay, and now I can draw in my petals. So my main petal is going to be right in the very front. So I'm going to draw it kind of in the center, but just a little bit to the right. Okay, and then I'm going to draw a petal to the right of it and a petal to the left. All right, and now this tulip is kind of opening up, which is why we have the oval right there. So I'm going to draw one back petal and it's going to kind of connect the left petal with the right petal. Okay, I can turn off my original template now. That way all we have are our petals. And now I'm going to draw a stem, and my stem is going to have a nice little transition and come down. That looks good. Now I can reduce the opacity of this template so I can draw my petals in with color now. And each petal needs to be on its own layer because once we start adding our highlights and our shadows, that part's going to be really important. This tutorial is a little bit more advanced. So if you haven't checked out my free Procreate for Beginners course yet, if you feel stuck or if you run into trouble at all, I would definitely recommend checking out that course. It's entirely free, and then you'll be able to pick right up. Okay, so I'm going to create a brand new layer, label this one main petal, and this one's going to have this fourth pink color right here, and I'm just going to trace over my template and then fill it in with color. All right, I'm going to create a brand new layer, drag it underneath my main petal, label this one right petal, and the color of this one is going to be this third color right here. And you want to make sure that your path is entirely closed, otherwise when you fill it with color, the entire canvas will fill up. So if you want to double check to make sure that it is a closed path, just turn off the visibility of your main petal, and that one is closed, so now I can drop that color in there. And now I can move on to my left petal. So I'm going to create a brand new layer, label this one left petal. Let's check and make sure that it's a closed path, and it is. I can drop my color in and turn my main petal back on. All right, so now all we have to do is paint in our back petal. So I'm going to come all the way down to my main template layer and create a new layer right above it so it's behind all of my other petals, and label this one back petal. So the color of this one is going to be the second pink color. Fill it in with color. And there we go. So the last thing we need to do is add in our stem. So create a brand new layer up at the very top. So select your main petal and then create a layer, because our stem is actually going to cover the very bottom part of the petals to tie them all together. So I'm going to label this one stem. I'm going to grab the second green color on the bottom and trace. Okay, up at the very top, we're just going to make a semicircle that transitions really nicely and holds everything together. Fill it with green, and that is all set. Now we can turn off our main template layer, and there is our tulip. So you could stop right at this point if you just want to keep it a flat style, but if you want to add in a little bit of dimension, I'm going to show you how I add in really soft highlights and shadows. So for our main petal, I'm going to come to my main petal layer, create a brand new layer right above it, tap on the layer thumbnail and choose clipping mask, and this one's going to be labeled highlight. And we're going to grab our brightest pink right here at the very end, and I'm going to draw kind of an oval shape, fill it with color, and now we're going to apply a Gaussian blur. So come up to your magic wand, tap on it, choose Gaussian blur, and then drag it up until it feels comfortable the size of the highlight. That's looking pretty good to me. I'm at almost 10%. I'm going to go all the way to 10. And if you want it to look more obvious, you can always just duplicate this and that'll give it twice the intensity. So that's a nice quick little trick to make any highlight or shadow darker or brighter, just duplicate the layer. So if I slide this over and choose duplicate, you can see how much brighter it becomes. I'm actually going to reduce that a little bit. I don't need it that bright. So if you ever want to go like 1.5 times, just reduce the opacity down to 50% and then you'll have 1.5 times the intensity. Okay, so that's all we need to do for our main petal. Now we're going to add some highlights and shadows to our left side and our right side petals, and then we'll drop a shadow in the middle to make it look like it's opening up a little bit more, and then we'll finish everything off with our stem details. So for each the left and the right side petals, we're going to start by drawing our shadows first. So let's begin with our left side petal. So if I select my left petal, create a brand new layer, apply a clipping mask, because whatever we apply to this layer, we want to make sure that it's locked into the shape of that petal. So tap on the layer thumbnail and choose clipping mask. We're going to begin with the shadow this time, and then we'll add in the highlight. So label this one shadow, and we're going to grab our darkest red color right here. And all I'm going to do is draw right along this edge and then close it up. And if you want to see what that looks like, you can just turn off your main petal, and I'm going to fill it with color. Make sure your path is entirely closed. I'm going to turn my main petal back on, and we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to apply a Gaussian blur, and we're going to make sure that it feels really comfortable, whatever the size is. So come to your magic wand, choose Gaussian blur, and then drag it up until you're happy with the amount of blur on it. And that feels pretty good to me. This one's at 7%, so I'm going to leave it there. That one seems just a little dark, so I'm going to reduce the shadow's opacity down to like 80%, just to soften it a little bit more. Okay, so now we can add in a highlight to this petal, and we're going to do the exact same thing. And believe it or not, you can actually stack clipping masks in Procreate. And it's a really useful technique to use that is non-destructive, meaning you don't remove anything permanently. You can always adjust things later. So I recommend using stackable clipping masks as opposed to alpha lock if you're familiar with that. It's a much, much better, smarter, more efficient way to work. Okay, so in order to create a stackable clipping mask, all you have to do is come back to your left petal, create a brand new layer above it, and since there was a clipping mask above it, the brand new layer automatically takes on a clipping mask. So both of these layers are locking into this shape. So that's really useful, especially for something like this where we want the highlight and the shadow to lock into the petal. We don't want shadow poking out over here in our white area. That's what would happen if we didn't apply a clipping mask right here. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to label this highlight. I'm going to grab my light pink color again and just draw a shape on the edge where my highlight would be. And then apply a Gaussian blur again. And this one's going to be, I think that looks good. This one's about 7.5%. Okay, so now what we just did with our left petal, we're going to do the exact same thing on the right side, just to repeat everything to hit everything home. So navigate to your right petal, create a brand new layer above it, tap on the layer thumbnail, choose clipping mask. We're going to label this one shadow. Grab your dark red color, draw right along the edge. Drop in your color, make sure it's filled in. That looks good. Apply a Gaussian blur. This one's at about 7.5%. I'm going to reduce the opacity down to 80%. And then tap on your right petal again, create a brand new layer above it. This will automatically apply a clipping mask. Tap on the layer thumbnail and name it highlight. Grab your lightest pink color and then just give this a little bit of highlight on the edge. Apply a Gaussian blur to this one. I'm bringing mine up to about 6.5% on that, and that looks good. Okay, the last thing we need to do with the petals is to add some shadow so it looks like it's opening up, that it's darker on the inside. So what we're going to do is navigate to back petal, create a brand new layer above it, tap on the layer thumbnail, choose clipping mask, rename this one shadow. We're going to grab our darkest red color, and I'm going to draw a shape down here, fill it in, and then apply Gaussian blur again. And this one, I'm going up to 7.5% again. And I'm actually going to move this up a little bit further. So now all we have to do is worry about the highlights on our stem, and then we'll add in leaves at the end. So for the stem, I'm going to make where it meets this transition area, where the stem meets the petals, I'm going to make this a lighter green color. So I'm going to navigate to my stem, create a brand new layer above it, label this one highlight, apply a clipping mask. So tap on the layer thumbnail and choose clipping mask. I'm going to grab my lightest green color right here, and then just draw a shape over it. Fill it in with color, apply a Gaussian blur, and I'm bringing mine up to about 9%. That looks good. Okay, so now I'm going to group all of my layers together. So drag them all to the right, hit group, and now I'm going to duplicate my group. So this is just going to be labeled Tulip. Slide it to the left, choose duplicate. We're going to select it. We're going to flip it horizontally, so tap on the flip horizontal. And now I'm going to rotate it, reduce the size slightly so it looks a little bit different than the original one. I'm just going to erase the stem on this because I want these two to come together. Okay, I'm going to make this transition area a little cleaner. All right, so now we're going to draw in some leaves. So I'm going to close this up. Okay, so now to unify these two tulips that are kind of coming together off of the same branch, we're going to apply some leaves and apply some shadows and highlights to those leaves. So we're going to create a brand new layer right above the main template. So create a brand new layer. We're going to grab the very first green color right here, and I'm going to draw a leaf right here and another leaf here. Fill these with color. All right, create a brand new layer. Let me label this one leaves. I'm going to create a brand new layer, label this one fold. And this is going to have just an extra detail of the leaf folding over. So I'm going to grab my lightest green color and draw a shape that kind of looks like this. Fill that with color and do the exact same thing on the other side. And we're going to apply a clipping mask to this. So tap on the layer thumbnail and choose clipping mask, and that will lock it into the leaf shapes. And now that looks a little more realistic. And then the last thing we want to do is just apply some shadow from where this fold is happening. So I'm going to create a brand new layer right above the leaves, but underneath the fold. And when I do that, it'll automatically take on a clipping mask because the layer above it has a clipping mask applied. So now I'm going to grab my darkest green right here. It's the third one. Label this one shadow. And I'm just going to draw a heavy line right here, and then a little bit of a sliver of a line right here, because I want the shadow to be more intense where this fold is. Okay, apply a Gaussian blur. And mine is up to about 5.5%, and that feels good. So there you go. That's how to create dimensional tulips entirely in Procreate. Once again, a link to the free color palette as well as that free brush are right in the video description, so just tap on there and you can have access to both of those. The free Procreate for Beginners course that I mentioned is also in the video description if you'd like to check it out. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can be notified of new tutorials just like this one in the future. For more Procreate tutorials and freebies, head on over to my site, every-tuesday.com. You can also find me over on Instagram. My handle is everytuesday. If you try this out and post it there, I would love it if you tag me. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next week.